Like, bring me my meal. All right. Michelle.
Yes.
How you doing?
I'm good. Good to be here.
Thank you for coming by to, I guess, the wonderful city of Atlanta.
Yes. Yeah. I like it. I've always enjoyed the city. So, yeah.
So for people who may not be familiar with yourself, if you want to just introduce yourself.
Yes, I am Michelle Smith, and I am I guess you want to say founders of Force of Light Entertainment on YouTube. I also am a minister, a licensed minister, and have my PhD in theology.
Very nice.
Yes.
So how long have you had the YouTube channel?
So we started out, my sister Natalie is my co-host, and we started out in 2020, not the best year to start a podcast about entertainment. But yeah, because we started the podcast in like February of 2020, like a few weeks before the world shut down. And of course, no new movies were coming out for quite a while. So it was, we had to be inventive, but basically we switched over to YouTube in 21 and kind of never looked back and just kind of left the podcast thing behind for the most part.
Before it was audio only?
Yes. In fact, starting, I should go back to that. The way we started Force of Light Entertainment, it actually started, the idea came from, I started or wanted to start, Force of Light podcast, which is a Christian podcast. And I still have that. That is still actually audio only. In all places podcasts are. So I started that right around the same time, 2020. But that didn't matter as much with everything that happened in 2020. But as I kind of got going with this idea for this Christian podcast, I was like, well, I've got what I need to do another type podcast. And I'm just the type person, I've always loved movies, television. I'm the type person who can talk your head off after we see a movie. I'm gonna really think about it and dissect it and want to talk about it. And I used to, my sister and I didn't live in the same city at one point in time. And when I would come back, I would come stay with her. And she would literally be getting out of bed and I would march into her room, sit in a chair and start talking about like a television show. She's like, will you please stop? But, but that's kind of how it started. And then that's when I had the idea, well, I've already got this going. I've already got this idea, Force of Light. Why don't we just make a entertainment podcast and talk about movies and television? And so it kind of all started from that.
Very interesting. See, I just got the origin story.
Yes, that was the origin story.
Very cool.
Yeah, and Force of Light, people like to ask how I came up with that name a lot. For me, it was a play on two things, and my Christian faith, multiple scriptures, of course, tons of scriptures talking about us being light. Jesus is the light of the world. We're called to walk as children of the light and walk in the light. And then also a passage of scripture that is very much debated, where Jesus is talking, it's debated of who he's talking about, but he says that the kingdom of God suffers violence and the violent take it by force. And I just kind of took all these scriptures, and the way I took Force of Light for myself, what it meant to me was we as children of God are called to be a force, not forces, not multiple, but one force of light to combat darkness in this world. So that's kind of how I came up with that. Then on top of it being a massive Star Wars fan my whole life, you've got the light side of the Force. So I put those together and came up with Force of Light Entertainment.
Makes perfect sense.
Yes.
So before we go any further, what'd you get?
I got the turkey sub with on a croissant. The croissant sounded nice. I like a good croissant. So
I'm so used to doing croissants for breakfast, so that's why I skipped over that. But
gotcha.
I got a club sandwich.
There you go.
And it's a massive club sandwich.
Yeah, they stacked it. I like it. They didn't rip you on the meat and stuff.
No,
it's good.
Not at all. This is the eating portion of the of the show.
It's like when Joe Rogan had Elon Musk on, they had pizza.
They were just chilling. Except our show has no weed.
Yeah, that's true. We're totally sober here.
Totally sober. Afterwards. So it's interesting. You're talking about Christian perspective, Star Wars perspective, but I believe the reason I found you is because of the politics. Or
Yes.
I guess culture.
Culture, yes. Yeah, because we do pop culture on our show as well.
Mm-hmm. I'm trying to remember, but I think the first time I saw you was on
Carrie Smith's channel.
Yeah. And how did you make that? Because the question I'm really digging for is, those seem to be like two separate things as far as three separate things: the entertainment and the Christian. So to come on a political, cultural show like Carrie's, what made you want to even discuss these particular things or want to go into that avenue?
So I first discovered Carrie Smith. I first discovered her in, I want to say 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And she was beginning to address the social justice warrior narrative, kind of the woke ideology, whatever word you want to use to describe it, really just Marxism. I mean, and she was the first, I saw her on another show and I stopped and I wanted to listen to her because it was like defected Democrat speaks on something. I don't remember. And it just caught my attention. And it was really Carrie Smith, because in entertainment, in pop culture, if you look at the trades, we'll even go with Star Wars. Anytime a new Star Wars show comes out, the fans are racist, the fans are sexist. They just don't like a female lead, is what we're always told. And we've been told this now since 2007 or 2017, because things really started heating up even in entertainment in 16.
Mm-hmm.
And anyways, my brain sometimes even back then struggled to understand when I heard some of these YouTubers talk about why they didn't like it. Even my brain was struggling on, is it just because it's a woman? Like, my brain was stuck there. And anyway, so when I heard Carrie Smith, she was able to break down the real issue. Mm-hmm. And it was the first time for me. So that's an entertainment, but also what she really helped me with was in theology. Say I couldn't figure out for myself, even when I was in a PhD program, say like feminist theology. I, as a woman minister, have no problem with a woman being a pastor or really holding any position in ministry. Biblically, I don't see an issue with it. But I despise feminist theology. And I couldn't figure out, why do I not like this theology? And it was really when I was listening to Carrie, she helped me with both those aspects. What these guys were really saying wasn't about women. It was about the social justice aspect that they were bringing in, and they were bringing it in. And then also for me, it helped me realize, oh, well, this is why I struggle with feminist theology. It's basically rooted in Marxism as well. And it's not about women just being able to be a pastor. It's that women basically kind of going over men. It's that same nonsense. And so that's how Carrie and I, and then somehow we got connected through, because of course Carrie's background, she had worked in Hollywood. Mm-hmm. So she's got a connection to entertainment, and somehow our paths crossed, and it's been a friendship and ever since. But I've enjoyed going on her show. I usually go on her show and talk Christian, because she's one of those that kind of as she kept coming a little more conservative and thinking, genuinely found her faith. And I go on her show on Wednesday. Every other Wednesday, we do a Christian panel, which you just recently came on, and we do that. But as far as politics, that was something I've just always been interested in my entire life. Really I say my entire life, I would say from the time I was about 16, I was already engaged with politics and just curious about it, very interested about it. So I always, even though I try to not be political on our channel, but we don't avoid when pop culture intersects with politics, and it does a decent amount actually. But as far as going on a channel like Carrie's, it's always fun for me to get to talk politics. I enjoy it.
No, that's cool. I mean, there's a lot of intersecting narratives that come into play. Unfortunately, the political stuff intersecting into just mundane entertainment that we're just trying to enjoy. And I've been seeing like slow trickles of ideology coming into play over the years. And I remember watching like the college campus, you know, students who were purple hair protesting this and that, with all these weird grievances that regular people
don't have. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
And that's because, well, for one, it's a cult. And I appreciate Carrie for breaking it down for what it is.
Yes.
It's very much a cult-like mentality. You know, the going after people who defect, isolation, that's a very common thing. Whereas we're like, let's listen to different ideas. They say, no, you're not allowed to, don't. They discourage varying viewpoints. And I think what I'm worried about is that mentality has seeped into political discussion just in general.
Yes.
Well, you shouldn't listen to someone who has a different viewpoint. You shouldn't understand it. And if you do hear it, it's always with the assumption that everything that they're saying is malicious.
Yes.
Or no, it sounds good, but what they really mean is this. And it's like, not everything is like that. But sometimes it is.
Yeah.
But with the Marxist ideology, what's interesting is it's almost to the T, like everything that they say, it's the opposite.
Yes. Yeah.
So if it's about women empowerment, it's having women go in a subservient position.
Yes.
If they say it's not about power, it is about power. You know, if they say men doing this, it's bad, the reality is they want to do that.
Yes. And that's what you find in entertainment. And what I was able after, again, that was kind of 2020. My brain was fully able to be like, oh, these YouTubers, these guys, like, they're not sexist. Like, I get what they're saying now. But it was through Carrie Smith breaking it down for me. And because you see that in entertainment today, the female characters, they love to say strong female characters. And you find with most of them, now there are still some good ones, but you found, especially from 2016 till very recent, I think Hollywood's starting to realize this is a loser. But you would see with these female characters, basically what they did is they stripped them of all femininity and they gave them the traits that they claimed they despised in men. And basically what you're left with is a very unrelatable, unlikable character. And that's what it is.
Almost like a shrewd feminist.
Yes, yes. And they're just, and that's what people don't like. And it just doesn't really sell at this point.
It's, and you've probably heard this, show, don't tell.
Yes.
And they do so much telling.
Oh, I know.
There's so many movies. Charlie's Angels was one of them.
Oh,
where,
the new one?
Yeah. The new one, where every woman was not only model beautiful, but the smartest woman. She's a scientist, she's this and that, and she can beat you up. And she has no decline in her storyline. Like she starts the movie amazing. And
ends amazing. The Mary Sue. Yeah, that's what we call the Mary Sue character. Because the Mary Sue they don't give them the proper hero journey. There's no struggle. They, as you said, they start amazing and they end amazing. And that's pretty much what Hollywood has given people, and people see through it. And on top of that, typically then the male character has to be kind of stupid. Like, because the female has to be weak. The female has to be stronger, but they've not written a strong character. So you're left with two not well written characters. And it just, that's what it's been for the last, really, again, since 2016. And audiences just don't really connect with it. And that goes across the board. That's not just like half the country doesn't connect and the other half does. No, it goes beyond that. I would say 70% of the audience has rejected this nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
The other thing that bothers me is there's a level of revisionist history where they pretend there's never been a female lead. They pretend that
they're always the first.
They're always the first. Or like, this is groundbreaking. I was like, we've seen this plenty of times.
Yes.
They always pretend that Black people were never part of movies.
Yes.
or not what you would call like movies that feature a Black lead that wasn't like specifically a whole Black cast.
Yes.
I'm like, it's happened lots of times.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many people are like, I love Denzel. And they don't look like me. Right. And so there's tons of people who cross over because they're just good.
Yes.
They're just good characters. And then what I see is like this revisionist history so they can make now seem like we're finally doing the thing. And I was like, you've been doing the thing.
Yeah.
But now you're doing it worse. Like, it's terrible.
Yes. Well, it's funny you say that because the revisionist history. So do you know what actor, who was the top paid actor in the 1980s? Well, technically it was Harrison Ford, but then again, he had in the 80s, he had 2 Star Wars movies and 3 Indiana Jones movies. But the second behind Harrison Ford, who only got it because of these most paid because of those 2 massive franchises, was Eddie Murphy. Eddie Murphy was right under Harrison Ford in the 1980s. And again, Harrison just got it because he got 2 of the biggest franchises ever.
Right.
But yeah, like everyone loved Eddie Murphy because he was a great actor and he's funny. So yeah, you see, or say with, because again, we get into nerd culture too. You had Black Panther come out, and no issue with that. I get why, like that would be appealing. I mean, that's people like the character Black Panther, but they acted like we had Wesley Snipes Blade. Like, you know, like this is the first time, and it's like, well, no, actually, Blade was a massive hit when it came out, and people really loved Wesley Snipes.
Right. But
they do it with everything. Like you said, whether it's race or sex, they do it with everything. They're always the first now.
Yeah. My favorite is the 120-pound woman who takes on every man.
Just like that.
At the same time.
And then she struggles with the woman. There'll be like 100-pound woman and she's going to struggle for her life with that woman, but she can take down the Rock in, a few seconds.
Funny you say that. I was just watching a movie. Gal Gadot was fighting The Rock and Ryan Reynolds at the same time. And I was just like, and they really couldn't stop her. And I was like, wait a second, what? The Rock just has to run at her and spear her. That's it. Game over. That's it. But they made her seem like, if it's Wonder Woman, I get it.
Yeah, because it's Wonder Woman.
It's Wonder Woman. But she's not one.
No.
So it's stuff like that. I've seen this over and over. One of the what's it the spinoff of the Joker with his Harley Quinn, the Harley Quinn one.
Birds of Prey.
Birds of Prey, yes. That one too. Where she's just taking on every guy. Every guy's a bumbling idiot. Either they're an idiot or they're like really evil. Like just terrible people.
They didn't put a single sympathetic male character in the movie.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
But then, funny enough, the perspective of a strong female character is unlikable as all hell. So it just makes for like a terrible movie.
It does. It does. Well, and I think you've seen with Hollywood, I mean, just like it's reflected in the world, they're so obsessed with meeting. Like they literally have like these check boxes now that they have. I mean, we've seen them. Amazon released it. The check boxes that they have to go through to get approved. And it's just like, there's no creativity at the end of the day because you've killed it by meeting this criteria that you claim makes something good or accessible to all people. And you're losing the fact that the most important thing is is an interesting story and likable characters. And if you have those two things, I think most Americans don't care what their race or gender is. They're going to get interested.
Right. I remember not too long ago, I think it was like a year or two ago, I was watching Fight Club.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, man, this movie is so good and it's so edgy in certain points. I said, why can't we make this? And it's, I would imagine there's some director that's out there, some writer that has something like that gets neutered to all hell, and they say, F this project.
Yeah.
Or they go independent and you never hear about it. They don't have the proper budget to pull it off. I will say that there are some independent, I'm probably butchering, was it A26?
A24.
A24. I was a couple digits off.
I'm like, is it A25? No, it's A24.
A24. And it seems like they've been able to make good movies on lower budgets, and they're actually kind of interesting.
Yes.
You know? So I appreciate stuff like that. But they have to do it in that way.
Yes.
Because, well, the big production companies, they have all these limitations.
Well, I was recently shocked. I just saw, we reviewed recently, at least at the time of this recording, we had seen Twisters. And the Hollywood media base, I mean, it did really well, but the Hollywood media, they wanted to know why they didn't mention climate change. You know, because that's what people want with a big blockbuster. We want climate change in our movie. And, you know, thank goodness. And it's probably why the movie's done well. It was kind of a throwback to a different day. It was just an entertaining movie that didn't push a message.
I just want to see a movie where they blow shit up.
Yeah.
Like, can
the tornado takes people out.
Some of my favorite movies are the old action movies with like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Jean-Claude Van Damme and all those. They were written okay, but that's not why you watched it.
No.
Like if it had good writing, like Bloodsport was actually a decently written movie.
I see. We've never watched that. We've been debating reacting to that sometime.
Did you watch Bloodsport?
Okay.
Especially for being in, I think it was in the 80s. I don't think it was the early 90s movie.
I think it was 80s.
It was 80s, right? Yeah, it has the 80s vibe to it, so that's why. Like it was written decently well. It has a storyline. It has, it has the ups and downs, the challenges, and at the end, the person is victorious. It's like great story, along with great fighting scenes along the way. But I also like the stuff where they just blow shit up. It's not written great. It's a little bit campy, but it's a fun action movie. We don't have a lot of fun movies anymore.
No, we don't.
Is serious. Even the comedies. I don't know if you've noticed.
Well, we don't have comedies.
I was about to say we don't really.
No, we don't have them. No. Like, well, and I think it goes back to what we're talking about, that SJW narrative, that social justice warrior narrative. It strips creativity and comedy because everything's off limits of what you can laugh at now. Everything's offensive. And when everything's offensive, like comedy just kind of dies. And we've seen that. And we really are missing that as a society. A good comedy is, I mean, they're powerful. Like we all need to laugh some and lighten up a little.
Right. And now here's the side effect. The side effect is that everybody starts self-censoring.
Yes.
So we go to a point where no one attempts to write that. No one tries to produce this. No one attempts to pitch this. Everybody's like, well, they won't like this. We can't talk about this, and we shouldn't joke about that. So they don't even attempt it anymore. And I think that's a shame that we come to that point. But I think when we use the examples of I call them like the horror stories. Whether we're talking about this topic or any other topic, what happens is the horror story, the bad outcome, everybody hears about the horror story. So then everybody adjusts their behavior because of the horror story. So if you hear someone gets canceled because they said this on the internet, well, then you say, well, I don't want to get canceled. It's like, yeah, but the likeliness that you'd get canceled, like no one gives a shit about you.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, you're likely highly likely not going to get canceled because you made an opinion or you gave a political opinion about who your favorite politician is. But everybody interprets that horror story
Yes.
as a warning to adjust your behavior, or else this is the outcome that you'll get. And so people don't weigh the odds of something to happen. Like, what's the worst that'll happen? All right, let's say you lose your job, and that sucks, and I've been unemployed, but I found another job.
Yes.
You know, so is it worth it? So is the risk worth it? And what's the likeliness that this will even happen in the first place? And so that's why I've talked about my situation. I wrote a book that some people may not like, and I didn't ask my job.
Yes. Yeah.
I just said, I want to do it. And if it means I lose my job, then that's what happens.
Yeah.
And they embraced it, you know, and I got embraced by all different types of people because of it. And it's because most people aren't social justice warriors. It's just that a lot of people are afraid of this fringe minority. And some of the fringe minority are in positions of power, for sure.
Yes.
So that's the area where they're disproportionate, right? They're disproportionate in areas of power because they go to these colleges, they come out, they're your new HR manager, you know, they're your new boss, they're the heads of this and heads of that. And they're often, you know, part of the wealthiest of Americans as well. So that doesn't help us either. And they get to dictate all this bullshit that we never cared about. It's not our interest whatsoever. So like we were joking before about the white women for Kamala.
Yeah.
And, you know, I actually just wrote a piece today. Hopefully it goes into the New York Post today. But I was making the point that if this is the way that we're going, where we have abandoned what we have in common,
yeah,
and we just have various demographics, because it used to be before that everybody was kind of okay if you were a minority and there was some little coalition of something, right? But now if we're just saying anyone and everybody, because it's not just white people for Kamala, it's white women. Now it's white men. Now it's Latino men, Black women. It's all these different coalitions in support of Kamala right now. But what if this becomes the norm? And what if every political party, every politician's like, listen, the block of people that really turns out and raises a lot of money is white, affluent women. So let's listen to what they have to say. Oh, what's that? Working class American? Who cares about immigration? Who cares about the economy? Well, the affluent white women, they're not concerned with those things. So what's that? Patriarchy? You know, it's that kind of thing.
That sounds like privilege to me.
It sounds like privilege. And you know what? They acknowledge their privilege.
They do.
And
they do.
Exercise it too.
Yes.
They just never acknowledge their class privilege.
Yes.
So when I go into the Zoom call and I look, and it's influencer with millions of followers, mega rapino, celebrity here, celebrity there, and I'm like, this is it. This is the class warfare that I was worried about. So it just has a smile on their face. That's
yes. No, you're absolutely right. I don't know if you saw the white men for Kamala. That might have been even cringier than the white women for Kamala.
I've dubbed it cucks for Kamala.
That's pretty accurate. That's pretty accurate. Yeah, it was some celebrities, and it was something to behold.
It's weird, and obviously we make jokes about it because a lot of these leftists are very just like dogmatic and weird.
Yes.
And like absence of reality, and they say the same stuff, which is why it's very culture sounding.
Yes. Yeah.
Like I could be around 1,000 Christians and they all have a different perspective about the same faith. They don't say the same words.
Yes.
They have the same language. They have different interpretations. And I'm just like, that makes sense to me, right? We usually come around the similar conclusions, but the pathway we get there is different.
Yes.
Sometimes we don't come to the same conclusion. But when I see this, it's the language, it's the same conclusion, It's the affirmation. Yes, of course. Yes, white supremacy. We must exercise our privilege. It's the same buzzwords, and I've become like attuned when I hear someone say inclusivity. I'm just like, never mind.
No, yes.
I'm just like, because it's not the word. It's not the word itself. Because the word itself, inclusivity, there's nothing wrong with that. But I know why they're saying it,
like,
and I know what's behind it.
Do you think you'd be included? Like, if do you think had they let you come on the White Men for Kamala, do you think they would have been inclusive of your viewpoint?
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. So it's really this very fake. Like, we're inclusive. No, you're not. Like, you're only inclusive to those who think exactly like you and parrot the exact same talking points.
Even the woman who started the White Women for Kamala, part of what she said was she got the okay from BiPOC individuals, BiPOC women. That's what she said. She got the okay from them.
Yeah, because we've changed the name of people of color to what does BiPOC stand for now? It's hard to keep up with everything. It really is.
Anyone who's not white. That's basically
yeah. Anyone, non-white people.
Non-white people. But she got the okay, right? And they said, now it's your turn, right? And so and she got it from this person. So she got her feelings validated from this person and gets to use this person as this is why I did it. A BiPOC person said it's okay. Oh, well, okay then.
It's good.
It's good then. And here's the thing. I could talk to you and you could be like, my friend Adam, who is Black, agrees with me on this. But you wouldn't be like, and hence all Black people agree on this.
Yes. And so I can say this because one Black guy said I could, you know, type thing. Yeah.
But that's how it's always portrayed. And we're here trying to support BiPOC women. And I'm just like, well, would you support a BiPOC woman if she was a Republican? No.
No.
Right? If she supported Trump? No. So obviously not. So, well, you're using this as a facade.
Yeah.
Like to say, look how good of people are. They don't look like us and we're in support of them. Oh, look at this. Our white privilege, we're exercising it in the right way. And that's, it's like this condescending. And that woman in that video, oh my God, it's like nails on a chalkboard. Just like the amount of, I know she was was it elementary school teacher?
It was Valley, and it kind of went little childlike sounding.
So?
Yeah. And everything kind of ends with it sounds like there's a question mark at the end of every statement. It's like, are you asking a question or are you just telling me something?
Yeah. But and these are the people who are dictating the conversation.
Yes. Yeah.
The Yup Talk influencer from fucking who knows where, who talks to everybody like they're children. So, I mean, that's the part that's maddening for me, is that we shouldn't have all of this. If there's going to be some sort of coalition, to me, it's like, it makes sense if there is, I'll just make up something. Like, if Los Angeles, and there's a Black majority neighborhood, and these Black people have specific issues that they're facing because in this area, this is what's going on, makes sense for me to see this happening.
Yes.
But to have a national Black this, as if we're all experiencing the same dilemma, to me, it falls on its face. Because, and I talk to some people who are part of organizations like this, and there's always infighting. And why? Because they're not having the same issue.
Yes.
They're not facing the same thing. They might have like one or two things where like, yes, white supremacy is bad. And then you start looking, oh, well, it's a bunch of leftists, masquerading as this as being a Black organization. But if I was to come in there, they'd be like, get out of here, Uncle Tom.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
So it's just more of that. And we just ignore the individual. We ignore a difference of opinion. We ignore different perspectives. And we highlight stuff that we have zero control over. I had no control over me being Black or me being a man. I was just born this way. And somehow that determines how I feel, what I think, who I should vote for, and so on and so forth.
Yes.
And
yeah, there's no true diversity of thought.
Right.
It is just literally, like you said, things that you can't control. It's really bizarre. But yeah, I was watching a few minutes of because that's where pop culture always seems to cross politically. So you had Mark Hamill, Luke Skywalker, and you had Josh Gad, who's been in a lot of different stuff, played Olaf in Frozen. And Josh Gad is sitting there, and this is a grown man. And this grown man is talking about, I didn't even remember the exact night that Trump won. I think it was November 8th, 2006. I don't know. He named it. And how he went into his daughter's room and he just started weeping. And I was like, am I supposed to take this serious? Like, you're a grown man and you went in your daughter's room and wept because Donald Trump won? Like, what did you really think was going to happen? And that's what's so bizarre. Do these people really think like something dangerous and bad's going to happen? Or are they just peddling fear for no reason? I don't know. It's hard to tell.
I think they're serious.
I think some of them are. I think they really think, even though we have 4 years to go by if the world did it, burst into flames, but it's really bizarre to watch.
I made a joke with a Twitter guy, and he put up a screenshot of someone, Trump and Hitler comparison. And I said, you remember when Hitler got his second term and then really went to work? Like, come on now. Come on. To me, it's so silly. I mean, I'm used to the whole political discourse being absent of what happened 4 years ago.
Yes. Yes.
Just so short-term minded. And actually, that's been one of the things that's been bothering me is that I see people who have political discourse, who have zero political history.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not talking about, listen, I wasn't alive when Reagan, was it alive when Reagan? I can't remember. No, I think he was before me. But if he was alive.
You were a baby.
Yeah, I was a baby. And so I don't remember Reagan being in office, LBJ being in office. So some of that stuff going to be from secondhand, third-hand information. But I've been alive long enough where I remember George W. Bush, and I remember the environment from both his terms. I remember Barack Obama coming into office. I remember Barack Obama going up against John McCain, and what that was like, Sarah Palin. I remember all these things. And for many people, all they have is Trump.
Yes.
And I'm like, guys, for one, this is abnormal. Like, the stuff that they're used to is completely abnormal, but it's normal to them.
Yes.
I've met so many people who are like, I didn't follow politics until Trump. I'm like, cool, I guess. But just understand you're limited as far as understanding what's going on. And if you haven't been paying attention prior, you are like in circus world, trying to be like, yeah, circus world is normal. It's like, no. This is not normal. None of this is normal. Even like, I was just telling someone, it's only been a few weeks that someone tried to kill Trump.
Oh, and Google's trying to erase it.
And then 2 days later, we move on to the next topic.
Yes. Yeah.
And I was telling someone about when Reagan was shot. Obviously he lived, but when Reagan was shot, they talked about that for like a month. And I'm just like, all this is bizarre to me, that we're just like, Trump gets shot, and less than a week later, Biden resigns, and now we're all talking about Kamala. And we have to pretend that some person didn't just go on a roof and try to assassinate a former president.
Yeah, and ignore how that was allowed to happen. Yes.
So yeah, all this is bizarre. But I think having some sort of political relevancy or history is really, really important to distinguish what's normal and what's not normal.
Well, and what's sad, I'd be interested in your thinking. I think this, not to use a 2020 slogan they like to force down our throat, but I think this is the new normal. I think you saw whether had Ron DeSantis got the thing, he was Hitler. Like that's what the media was going to run with. They were going to try to slice him up. They already were trying. And you see it now with J.D. Vance. I mean, good Lord, this is a guy whose story, I mean, there's a Netflix movie on it, but whose story is so rooted just in normal American culture. And they're trying to make him out now to be the worst thing ever. I'm just saying it may not be quite as bad as it is with them with Trump, but I feel like something has switched, and I don't know that they can unswitch it.
Yeah.
I think at this point, just like the other, if you don't lockstep agree with them, I think they genuinely, and I'm not saying the voters necessarily, I'm saying the elites that put all this out there,
right?
The people in power. It's like, then you're the enemy, is how it feels. And I'm afraid, I don't think the discourse that we used to have with politics is coming back anytime soon, unless I think enough Americans are like, enough with these people, because these people are causing all the problems. Because I mean, back in the day, it's like before so much really Marxism took root in the left. I mean, we say the left wing of the Democratic Party, but it's everyone in power in Democrats right now, sadly. I mean, not everyone. There's a few, maybe congressmen or women here or there, but for the most part, that has taken root of that party. And until enough people from that party either leave that party or just like, guys, we can't do this anymore, I don't see us returning to. Because back in the day, Democrats and Republicans could easily be friends. And we just had, different disagreements on, maybe how much taxes we take out or just normal things. Where now we're sitting here trying to debate if children should be mutilated or not. And, it's just the discourse has gotten so extreme and intense that I don't see it changing anytime soon.
Yeah, and we've made an economy off of it that's new and different and profitable. So is it going to change? Probably not anytime soon, because now there's money invested.
Yes.
And I've been disappointed in independent media because they do the same things as mainstream media while complaining about the mainstream media. So I don't think things will get necessarily better in those regards. But I do have a question for you, because we can't go an entire
politics.
Yeah, we have to talk about Christianity. So why Christianity? No. Do you see an uptick in people going towards the faith?
Yes.
Okay.
And I think, whether I go back to, she's been brought up multiple times, Carrie Smith or you, both you have almost a similar story. And I think it because, I mean, Christianity, what does it say in John, the Gospel of John about Jesus? That the Logos became flesh and dwelt among us. Christianity is based, I mean, obviously I'm going to speak from a Christian perspective, but we believe that this is the truth. Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. So you have this element of truth that is this grounded truth in Christianity. And I think as the world has gotten so chaotic and so tries to, in fact, Romans says that they rejected the truth and embraced a lie. And I think we've been so living that, where so many people, they're recognizing this is wrong and there's something chaotic about all this, because it is. If it's not truth, it's a lie, and a lie is going to create a chaotic environment.
Right.
And I think out of that, people are looking for something true. They're looking for something that's grounded, that they can really anchor themselves into. And I think that's why you're seeing a shift of people, the ones that are willing enough to be like, something's off here. You're seeing them want that firm foundation, which of course us Christians would believe is Christ. And so that's why I think you're seeing, I definitely see that. And it's across the board, even for, I'm not Catholic, but I have Catholic friends, and for so long, people were even leaving the Catholic Church, but we're even seeing them come back to the Catholic Church again in mass number. And of course, in Protestants, people are either coming back or coming to the faith. So I definitely see a shift happening, which I'm thrilled about, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah, the thing about Christianity for me is that it just makes sense.
Yes.
I have a friend who's also a theologian. She's based in the Netherlands, and we connected while I was on my journey. We connected and we would have these different discussions. And I remember I would see something online or see like certain behavior, and I was like, "What does the Bible say about this?" And she would tell me. I was like, "That's what I thought."
Mm.
And I did that a few times, and she said, "You know, you're very much so spiritually in tune.
Mm.
Like it's like second nature."
Yeah.
And so for me, it's always been like I've always had like a strong conscience, and if I went against it, I just feel terrible.
Yes. Yeah.
So like when I see something, it's just wrong, and it just makes sense. I didn't need to go to the Bible to tell me that it's wrong.
Yes.
But the Bible confirms that my strong innate feeling, that I'm right. And when I keep going through the Bible, and the more I learn about the Bible and learn about the faith, I'm just like, everything that's intuitive to me, the Bible confirms.
Yes.
And everything that is like true, not true from a sense of like, well, there's different ways you can approach it. It's just like, no, there's certain things that are true. Mutilating children is evil.
Yes.
You don't have to be a Republican to say that. There's something about that just seems wrong.
Yes.
And so I'm like, yeah, of course. And so that's one of those areas where I'm like, the more I read into the Bible, the more I learn about it, the more I'm like, this makes so much sense. Everything about it makes sense. I've yet to come across a line where I'm like, well, I don't know about that. Where, you know, and sometimes it's just like interpretation, or it might be the translation, you know, Old English and stuff like that. And you're trying to figure out what exactly it means. But nothing so like perverse or whatever.
Yes.
And I think there are a lot of people who have opinions about the Bible, but who haven't read it.
Correct. Yes. And they have these very skewed ways of viewing God that don't really align with the Bible at all.
Yeah.
And they love to go to like these random Old Testament passages, and they take
God was angry.
Yes, like, and they take it way out of context. Right. Not that they even know the context, but they take it out of what it's just, yeah, that's what they like to do.
Yeah. I'll tell you another thing, and I've been like mini obsessed with it, but near-death experiences.
Yeah.
Because there's a guy named John Burke. He's a pastor. I don't know if you've ever heard of him.
I don't think I have.
He's a pastor out in Texas. He wrote a book called Imagine the God of Light. And he's done, over the years, thousands of interviews with people who had near-death experiences. And basically what he's summarizing is, no matter where they're from, no matter their culture, their religion, or anything like that, and there's a certain percentage of people who have near-death experiences that experience this and experience that. You know, so there are some actual like studies behind this for quite some time. But what he's saying is, no matter where they're from, they ultimately confirm what the Bible says about the afterlife in some form. So there are stories. There's one story that comes to mind. There's a Jewish girl, and I think she fell off the horse, and the horse fell on her.
Oh, yeah.
And she remembers floating above her body. But she also talks about how, like, when she was a little bit younger, she knew Jesus. Like, she was Jewish. She didn't grow up, but she felt him around her. And when she passed, she saw Jesus. And I believe she had like a life review, and she saw herself like in her room, and Jesus was there with her. And he's like, I've always been here with you. And she came back. And the thing about it is that they're always vivid. You know, when you have a dream, it's like, you know, I was me, but I wasn't me. They say it's more real than this. It's always vivid. It's always distinct. there are stories of people who are Muslim from remote
Yes.
parts of the world who go into the afterlife expecting one thing, and they see this
Expecting
person.
those virgins waiting.
And they're all prostitutes. No, no, but they're like in some face are like, you'll see 13 this or something odd like that. And they see a man and they immediately know it's Jesus. They have no recognition of a relationship or recollection of the Christian faith or anything like that. But there's something about the spiritual realm where everything is instant. Like you just have instant knowledge and instant understanding
Yes.
of what you're experiencing. And I'm thinking to myself, all right, one person's lying, 3 people are lying. Thousands of people are lying about these particular experiences. You have people who were blind
And would have had to lie about it for the last 2,000 years.
Right.
Because we have 2,000 years. You know, it's funny, that kind of always gets brought up, say, like on Joe Rogan. And I find it funny how it feels like everyone that goes on Joe wants to talk about Christ right now with him. But he kind of can't get past, well, people could have just made that up. Well, people could have made up all the other history you believe as well, if that's the route you want to take.
Right.
But you have 2,000 years of, and that's why I love my PhD was in specifically, it was theology, but the emphasis was church history. Is in church history, you really do see in Revelation, it says about Christians, they overcame by the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony. And what I see when you look through church history is the power of the word of their testimony and how they just keep overcoming, basically. And like you said, yeah, if one person had this or a few people, but when you have 2,000 years of experience of recorded healings, people coming back, even some coming back from the dead.
Oh, yeah.
You know, things like
Many
that.
people.
Yes. It's just, how can you not see the truth that's here?
Yeah. There's one story that comes to mind. It's a guy who's in the military and he had to get an IV put in and they didn't do it right. And there was air in the IV. And he remembers someone saying, you're going to feel something and it's going to be very painful, but it'll be okay. And you feel someone touching his hand, like comforting, touching his hand. He looks over, doesn't see anybody. He feels this excruciating pain and he dies. He was dead, I want to say, for something like 10 hours.
Yeah.
They transported his body from one hospital to another, and he was about to go through the whole process in the morgue when he came back. But while he was dead, he was with Jesus. And he was doing a life review of Jesus, and Jesus was giving him instructions and telling him, and he learned that Jesus was the one who was holding his hand while he was feeling that pain. So I'm like,
wow, yeah.
now, okay, I remember, this reminds me, I was talking to one guy about NDEs, and I know he's an atheist, and he was saying, well, you know, I've heard that, you know, there are fighter pilots who feel something similar when they're doing something. And I'm just like, these aren't fighter pilots. That's why I wanted to yell at them. It's like, they're not fighter pilots. They're not in extreme situations, man, where they're all of a sudden feeling this and they're not actually dead. These are people who have no electrical waves in their brain. They have no heartbeat, no pulse. They're dead. They're as dead as dead.
Yes.
And yet they come back not a couple minutes later, hours later, many times. And they have very distinct things with surety, and they change their entire life because of it. That's not a dream. That's not a, oh, well, you experience this moment when you come back. Like you can, and John Burke talks about this in the book, you can sort of explain away one thing.
Yeah.
But when one scenario features 10 things, you can't explain away all of that.
Yeah.
So
I
think the NDE experience actually really helped me to kind of understand. And actually that book is really good because it was one of the only books that helped me to understand that Jesus Christ is relational.
Yes.
And he's the only, from my understanding, he's the only God that humbled himself to experience what we experience, to feel pain like we feel pain.
Yes.
And he's empathetic to what we're experiencing. To me, that makes so much sense.
Yes.
When I see people who are like former drug addicts, people who are going through this, and when people say only Jesus Christ can save you,
Mm-hmm.
and he's not giving up on you, he doesn't give up on you. Like, something about that is because he knows what it's like to experience human pain. He's seen it up close.
Yes.
He's felt it, and he doesn't want to give up on you because of it. And there's the entire story is just like.
Well, that goes to a favorite verse of mine in the book of Hebrews. The book of Hebrews is a favorite book of mine in the New Testament. So I think it's genius. He just so geniusly relates, takes everything from the Old Testament and shows this is how it's fulfilled.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a verse there that says, talking about Jesus, that he has been touched with the feelings of our infirmities. And the word infirmities there can be our human cripplings, weaknesses that we have as humans. But the key thing is that not that he's necessarily been touched with the cripplings themselves,
Mm-hmm.
but he's been touched with the feelings. And, that's just so unique, because you look at, say, in our society today, mental health being such a big issue. I've said this before behind the pulpit, Jesus knows what it feels like to be forsaken, to be, I would almost say, depressed. I mean, he's in the Garden of Gethsemane, and I've never been to a place of blood is dripping out of my sweat glands. I mean, that is how intense, it was on him. And, but yeah, just that verse that he understands, like he knows what it's like to be lonely. He's felt that. He's felt these things that we feel as a human being. And that's why he's so gracious to us, because he's, as you said, he's experienced it. He's felt it. He's not just some distant God that looks down upon us,
Do this thing, you make me happy.
Yes. No, like he came and the word was made flesh, and that literally means tabernacled among us.
Yeah.
Because it goes back to, like you said, that relational aspect, that the triune God, if you even go back to Genesis, there's there's that Trinitarian language where they say, let us make man in our image, God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit. So humans were made in that three relationship, to be in relationship. Everything was made to be relational.
Yeah.
Everything was made, whether it's first it would be with God and then to neighbor. And it goes back to, when Jesus is asked, what is the greatest commandment? To love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your strength, all your mind. And the second is like the first, to love your neighbor as yourself. Everything comes back to relationship with the Lord.
Yeah. I can't even add anything to that. But the other thing I wanted to say is, especially coming from like the NDE experience and learning a little bit more, how we talk about hell. And the depiction of hell is always a place of
torment.
Well, not necessarily. Let me rephrase that. The depiction of hell is, you weren't a good person, so I'm going to punish you for eternity. And I think that's one way of seeing it. The way I understand it is that you have free will. I'm here as your savior. I want to be close to you. But like, if we were dating, or if I wanted to date you and you're like, I'm not interested, I can't make you become my girlfriend.
Yes.
Right? So you're choosing to live your life separate from me, and I'm going to respect your choice. Now, when you die, there is no more earth for you. There's only one place that I am not at, and that is this place called hell.
Yes. Yeah.
And also understanding from an aspect of God is a just God. So there's both of those aspects that come to it, but there's still always a chance where he is willing to forgive. So it's wrestling all of those things where it shows that he's not just he's not a wrathful God who is like, you didn't pray enough to me and blah, blah, blah. You didn't bend the knee when I wanted you to. he's respecting your choice.
Yes.
And through the NDE experience, I've heard people who have gone to hell and they struggle to explain the amount of torment that they experienced, and what they saw and things of that nature. But one thing that they always say is, I knew exactly why I was there, and I knew I deserved to be there.
Wow.
And that's the reason why they stayed there, is because they know I deserve to be here. I deserve this torment. That's why I'm here. What I translate, and I could be wrong, but it leaves room that if they didn't feel that, if they called towards Jesus Christ, he would pull them out. So it is a choice. It is a choice that we're making. So it's, for me, it's not about how many times you pray, how many times you do this. Did you do this exact thing? About the rituals. I think people get stuck on rituals. For me, and it's really helped me, it's about developing a relationship.
Yes.
Through prayer, through giving thanks. I give thanks for the things that I don't have.
Yes, yeah.
Because I'm not supposed to have that. So asking for guidance, asking for help, because I want to have that relationship. And so it's not about, I just don't want to go to hell.
Yeah.
It's the worst way to think about it. It's like getting married so you're not alone.
Yes, yes.
It's like, no, that's a terrible, terrible strategy.
Well, it doesn't work because, like, two things, I was thinking of when you were talking. The first, like, how would I define heaven? Heaven is where God abides. Hell is where God does not abide. It's hell is the one place that there is a total absence of the presence of God.
Yeah. And
that makes it hell. Because on earth, we already have, in theology, we like to talk about, we call it the already, but not yet. And what Jesus ushered in the kingdom of God, but it's already here on some level, but it's not yet here in the way it will be when he is here physically. So heaven is, again, that place where God abides. And one day that will be on the new earth. I feel like people, so often we talk about heaven. Ultimately, heaven will be the new earth, and we will be back on planet Earth. It just will be made new, and God will abide here with us. The second thing I was thinking of when you're talking, back to the freedom thing, the most fundamental truth of Scripture is, that's why people love to quote John 3:16, for God so loved the world. And the most fundamental truth is the depths of God's love for humanity. And when God made Adam and Eve, that is the whole point of why was there a tree? Why did he put that dang tree in there that allowed them to screw everything up? Because love requires choice. It's just what you're saying. If not, it's forced. I don't want to use one word that just came to my mind that we're not allowed to use on YouTube, but it's force, and love has to be a choice. And I like to tell people, because we live in this, like, in our Christian environment, people just focus on, and that's good. Again, the most fundamental truth is that God loves you, that God loves each person. Jesus loved each person enough to die on the cross for them, that much. And that is a fundamental truth. But that is not the question that Jesus asked. That is not the question the Bible asks you. The Bible makes the statement that God so loves the world. That's a spiritual fact. The question that each person has to decide is, do I love God? And if we love God, we are told multiple times, whether Jesus himself or in the book of John, of course, John being known as the apostle of love, that Jesus says, if you love me, you'll keep my commandments. And I love, he even goes on to say, my commandments are not burdensome. Like, it's not difficult to follow me.
Right.
Some people make things so difficult in how we follow Jesus. But Jesus says it's not difficult to follow me. But yeah, it does come back to, do we love him enough? Are we going to follow him? And, as we do, I think as you found out, you find life makes so much more sense.
Yeah. Yeah, especially when you have people who are telling you to do the opposite. And one of the things that was actually profound for me to understand was that evil can't create.
Yes.
It can only pervert, it can corrupt. And so when you see
the Olympics.
well, there's that. But like, we'll sort of use that. God gave us the ability to experience sexual pleasure, right? And he had it within certain confinements.
Yes.
But the perversion is sexual pleasure without the confinements and to do whatever you want. And so that's the perversion of what we're experiencing. And I think in our culture today, it's like a slow perversion of accepting, well, what about this? And technically that, socially it's okay. And I think that's the nefarious side that comes in that says, well, you're not doing anything wrong if you just show your breasts online.
Yes.
Right? You're not having sex with anybody.
Yeah.
And yeah, sure, we're giving you money. And so then, what do you say? You can't worship two things, right? So you start worshiping money over God and over your principles and how you're supposed to carry yourself. And every time that happens, you see people slowly die.
Yes.
Die from within. I was talking to my wife about there's documentaries about former porn stars, for example, and suicide, overdose, trauma, or if they don't experience any of those things afterwards, just a lifetime of struggle.
Yes.
Until you find the ones who find Christ. That's when they're able to have peace and start to move forward with themselves. But the rest struggle because they have this remnants of damage that they cause for themselves, to other people, and they don't know how to reconcile that. They don't know how to forgive themselves for that. And so they try to drink their way away or do all these types of drugs. But that's why I think there's something so profound about Jesus Christ and his nature and how people are able to turn their lives around. Not that saying it's like that, but it's a huge, huge switch for a lot of people to change. I think for me, I feel like I was always on this path. And I did certain things to course correct in my life, which just happened to be the things that Christ would tell you to do. And it was realizing that it wasn't my instruction book that I was following, it was someone else's.
Yes.
So I think that's what was a little bit different from myself. But I don't know. The more I'm learning, the more profound it is.
Yes. And really, too, like something I think you can see in kind of what you're even hitting on is anything that the Bible does call sin. If you look at it, like you're talking about prostitutes going down that road, it is always destructive to the person. Like anything God has told us not to do, sex outside of marriage. I saw a study that said that the women enjoy sex the most in a marriage, in a, that type of, it's like, well, duh, like that's the way God designed it. Like that's how we were designed, was to have that security as women. And of course that makes sense why, where you see whether it's Hollywood, just society at large trying to tell you the opposite, like the Sex and the City model, sleep with as many people as you want, you'll be happy. And it really just becomes Romans chapter 1, where it really just shows the decay of man. And as they exchange the truth for the lie, it's just a downward spiral until they have what it says, a reprobate mind. And really, as people are going down that spiral, it's like they are able to, they're so deceived. They tell themselves like, I'm good, this is good. And yet their life is if you're watching it from like a person with our perspective, you're like, they seem miserable.
Yeah.
And they are, because again, why did our Creator tell us not to do these things? Because they're harmful to us. It's not how we were designed to be. Right. So when you kick against the pricks, when you kick against the way we were designed, you're going to be miserable ultimately.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been a great conversation. We're nearing the end. I always ask one final question. Are you optimistic about the future?
Yes. I'm optimistic. I would say, in fact, a friend said this to me, but I think it accurately described me. She said, I think that you are an optimistic realist. And it's like, yeah, I think that is kind of what I am. Like, I'll be real about where the situation is. But at the end of the day, I think that optimistic spirit comes from my faith with the Lord.
Yeah.
Because I've read, you know, it gets said, but I have read the end of the book. Like, I know how it ends. It's not bad, guys. It's going to be good, ultimately. And even with our society, as much as there are concerns for where things are going right now. I mean, I don't think people realize it's like America is so at like a tipping point to where we could really lose like what we've had as a nation. It's like China's just sitting over there waiting for it to happen, it feels like. But I really do have hope, and that hope isn't in a politician. And God does work through man, but ultimately my hope is in Christ. And I just, as you said, we're witnessing people that you never really would have thought even sometimes would be coming to Christianity. And I think there is something going on spiritual. There is an awakening it's been very subtle.
Yeah.
It's a subtle awakening that's been happening. And it would be my prayer that the subtle begins to be not so subtle. Just may there truly be an awakening in this nation. Because I don't think you were there. On one of the Carrie Smith episodes I was on, I went through and I read the full quote, and I have to pull it up, but the full quote, have you heard the quote that says, when America ceases to be good, America will cease to be great?
Yeah.
Well, the full context of that quote, the guy goes through this whole thing, this Frenchman, and he goes through and he says, you know, I looked for America's greatness in her democracy, and it wasn't there. I looked for it in her commerce, and it wasn't there. And he goes through this whole thing of everything that we would think makes America great. And his conclusion of that is, but when I went into her churches and when I saw her pulpits flaming with righteousness, like that's what, and then it ends with that famous line now, when America ceases to be good, America will cease to be great. And that Frenchman way back then saw what made America special wasn't all this other stuff that, though very good, wasn't what made it unique. What made it unique was that founding of religious freedom, and ultimately those fiery pulpits of righteousness that were here back in the awakenings right as America was starting. So that is my hope. It's, again, not really in a politician, but is in the Church of the Living God, and that aspect rising up in this nation.
So what you're saying is we need to make America great again?
Yes, we need to make America righteous again.
Well, thank you so much for sitting down with me. This is a great conversation. I hope you enjoyed it.
Yes. Oh, I thought you were shaking my hand. I'll shake your hand, though. But it was excellent. No, I enjoyed it very much.
Excellent. Well, thank you again, and obviously we'll keep in touch.
Yes, sounds good.